This is the Unsweetened Truth with Kristen Pucci, where we talk about everything but don't sugarcoat anything. Welcome back to the podcast, episode 3, with my friend Anne Shambaugh.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you. So we're going to talk about something fun today. Maybe not fun. Fun and not fun.
Okay.
Women working in male-dominated industries. And I think just being a woman in business in general, just high-performing women, whatever people want to be that title, and just what that lifestyle is and what that career is like, and from our experience and our story. So I think other people will resonate with that if you're cool to go there.
I'm ready.
All right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, for the listeners that maybe don't know who you are, tell them a little about yourself, your background, and what you do now.
Okay. I stumble on this all the time. So, yeah, it's like being interviewed.
Yeah.
I don't know what I am.
You could lie. No one would know.
I don't know who I am. I don't know where I came from. No, I grew up in Virginia, moved up to PA when I got married. Went to James Madison, go Dukes. Yes. Have a master's in English. So everybody assumes, well, you can't do anything with that except teach. So
Right.
wrong. So wrong. Because in every job that you have, you need to have good grammar, good English, and knowing how to write helps you along. So started off working at FIA, then went to Delta Dental, ended up working for municipalities for about 20 years, fell into that job. My father and grandmother were living with me. My father fell ill, so it was necessary at the time I was working in Lancaster, so it was necessary for me to find a job closer. So I was hired for a very short term, 6 months, with Camp Hill Borough. They needed some help doing filing, just mapping things out, getting things in order. They'd gone through about 3 managers in less than 3 months.
Oh.
So they had a lot of turnover. They needed somebody to kind of get all these files, the documents, everything kind of managed. Did it in 4.
Okay.
They asked me to stay on permanently, which I said yes to. Loved the people, loved the job, and worked my way up to be the borough manager, which at the time, that was 2000. I started there 2005, became manager in 2012, and it really, at that moment, 12 years ago, that was a male-dominated industry. You did not have a lot of women that were in the municipal management positions. There were a lot as assistant managers, a lot as admins, a lot as finance directors, but you did not have them in that role. And it was interesting. I followed a very strong manager, and a lot of people just assumed that, oh, you just got it because, you know.
Yeah. You know.
You batted your eyelash.
Sure.
So I went on to manage.
God forbid.
I know. Heaven
was just
forbid
your
that we're
brain.
nice, or
was your brain, or you're smart, or you're talented, or anything else. It's always bring
or
it back
had a
to
couple
looks.
of degrees, or who knows.
Yeah.
Went on to manage 2 additional municipalities, Lower Soterra and the Borough of Steelton, and then got out of that and decided to work for the other side. So I currently am business development for Utility Services Group, which is an underground infrastructure company that specializes in sanitary and stormwater maintenance and repairs. So kind of full circle. The role I'm in now, one of our largest sectors is the municipal world. So I can kind of talk the talk and understand their pressures and their timing and their budgeting restraints, funding, things like that. So it makes it a little easier. But it's nice to be on the other side.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was it like for you back in, you said 2005?
Mm-hmm.
So I find it interesting being someone who works in recruiting for a long period of time. What was attractive for that role? Because there'd been so much turnover. Like, why were you even, do you know what I mean? Like, why were you even considering it? I feel like that's a
Massive red
red flag. 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 red flags. Yeah.
So the longtime manager left. They promoted the public works director. He lasted 1 week. Resigned.
Okay.
rather than simply stepping back and saying, can I just go back to being the public works director? And then they hired a woman who had been previously the mayor of Reading. So she wasn't really familiar with Camp Hill or this area per se, but she clearly had the political background. So I worked with her. She up and left. They made me permanent. They made me her assistant to the manager. Not the assistant manager, but I was the assistant to the manager. You know, a little bit of tweaking of the title.
Isn't that the Office that they have that? All right, we'll have to put that clip in there. He's like assistant to the manager. Isn't that Dwight? Dwight Schrute. Have you ever seen The Office?
Yes.
So Dwight Schrute's like, I'm the assistant to the manager. That's so funny. Okay. All right. So she was there
and they made me permanent in June. She left in July. They had an interim step in, and then they hired a permanent manager in October.
Okay.
At that point, literally the second day he was in, I walked in and said, I will submit my resignation if you want to bring your own staff in. Because I get it. You're new to the borough. While you have the background, you may want to, you know, have your own people who work with you. And he was like, do you want to leave? I was like, no. He goes, okay, we're good.
Oh.
So we ended up working really well together until he left. When he left, they took me on as the acting manager for 9 months. After I had been there for
everything but
for
avoid
9 years.
Do everything to avoid the actual title.
Right.
Everything to avoid the title.
So in September, they were like, oh, well, we voted you in. You can be manager now. Okay.
You can be manager now.
Yeah. So
we're allowing you to be manager now.
It was
love the language.
Yeah, a lot of tweaks to the manager, and then they eventually
with the manager the manager.
Then they eventually, you know, I was actually the assistant manager. But
that's bizarre. Okay.
Yeah, it was
interesting.
Different. People think that women don't know how to pave a road. People think that they don't understand how to get grant funding and things like that. It's like, none of that is hard. You can learn all of it. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yep.
And it certainly doesn't depend on your gender.
Yeah. When it shouldn't. But when was like the first time, if you can remember in your career, when was the first time that you really experienced or something became very aware to you that you're like, I don't want to say treated differently, because that's not the direction that I want to go with this, right? Like, I don't want to go like uber feminist, man hater direction, because that's not what either one of us are. But it's very real. It's something that should be talked about. I think it's more people are finding it to be true, and we can't speak for what it's like to be a man in business, because I know they have an entirely different set of experiences. But what was the first experience that you had that made you really go, I wonder if I'm being treated this way? Do you know what I mean? That it became apparent to you that something might be going on outside of your control.
I think part of it was when I was the assistant manager, and even through being the manager, I dressed a very specific way. Business suits, dresses, heels. If I was going into the field, I had appropriate shoes to wear. I had a hard hat, things like that. And as a manager, the field could consist of you're working on a pothole, you're digging a line. I mean, I had crews that did that. We often outsourced some of that work. But when I always got looked at because of the way I dressed.
Sure.
Like, it was almost insinuating that I was dressing I was wearing a dress because, oh, you're trying to be pretty, or and I could always feel that when I walked into a room or meeting with individuals. If I was the only female there, I always got the sideways glances. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's interesting. The attire piece, I think, is interesting.
Yeah, because I wasn't dressing for them. I was dressing professionally. A suit on any woman is professional.
But you're still going to get looked at.
It can be played up. It can be played down.
Oh,
but
my shingles are here.
Nice.
Great. Perfect timing. I think the attire thing is because no matter what, it's still a woman's body in clothes.
So leading into that, when I was manager, my public works director called me and he said, hey, I need you to come with me to go out and take a look at something. They've got a problem. Believe we were paving, and
Sure.
they either had a spot that we thought we needed to repair, something along those lines. I don't even remember the exact. Hopped in the truck, get to the site. One of the contractors looked at my public works director and said, why did you bring your girlfriend? And my public works director turned around and said, that's not my girlfriend, you idiot. That's my boss.
Oh my God. People are insane. And they'll just say it.
Yeah. Straight up as I'm I wasn't invisible and I wasn't sitting in the truck. I was standing on the street in my suit, in my heels. And my comment to him was, well, now that you've stuck your foot in your mouth, what is it you need me for? The whole crew was like, yeah, exactly.
I just don't, where's the audacity? Like, that you just would say that.
Well, and in front of me.
In front of you, in front of everyone.
If I leave
Sure.
and there's a comment made that I don't know about.
Well, you can't control that.
Okay, I can't control that.
We can't control that.
I can't control you being an idiot behind my back. I can certainly control it when you're in front of me. Or so I thought.
Yeah. Ugh. I had a similar circumstance happen. This was when I was working in recruiting. And I had a male boss, and I was, like, shadowing him, and I would go on meetings with him and stuff. And I was probably, I would have been 22, maybe, at the time. Yeah, I was young. And then I remember, well, it's even earlier than that, but this was, like, my second job out of college. I remember going into a meeting. We worked in construction, so you kind of just got it, which there's definitely positives and negatives, right? Like, there's definitely pros to both. But I remember walking into a meeting, and there was an assumption right off the bat that I was his assistant. I was there just to take notes. And the guy that was the owner of the company, I think it was like a electrical contractor or something. He was like, we were introducing ourselves, and he goes, you're a lot better looking than he is in the meeting.
I'm sorry, what?
Like at the conference room, he's like, you're a lot better. And then he was like, you're a lot better to look at than he is. It was something to that variation, right? We were talking many years ago. And I just remember being like, huh?
What?
Like,
how does that play into
thank you?
anything that you're talking about?
Like, I'm literally the one that's recruiting on the roles. But I have, of course, take out your notepad, Kristen. You're the one that's supposed to be taking notes. And it's just like, you're not wrong, right? Like, what came out of your mouth is not incorrect.
Correct.
I am better looking than this other individual over
God.
here. Thank God. I am better looking.
But what makes you say that?
What makes you say that, and why do you think that you can say that? Because of course it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, what do you expect is going to come out? Oh my God, thank you so much. That was so, no one's told me I looked great all day.
Let me bat my eyelashes.
No one has told me I looked great all day, and I really, really appreciate it. Because we have to, like, we can't make the assumption that it's all malicious, right? Like, we can't make the assumption that it's all malicious and it's trying to belittle you or it's trying to make you feel a certain way. So it's like, okay, if you were genuinely giving me a compliment, fine.
Sure.
Like you would give your daughter or your granddaughter or your wife or your whatever. But I'm none of those people to you. This is the first time you've ever met me.
Have you ever walked into a meeting and said to two people sitting there, two men or a man and a woman, and looked at the man and said, damn, you are fine. She's not so much, but you are amazing.
No.
Never.
It's insane. I've never even thought, like...
Never.
What is that?
Right. I think the farthest I get is if I walk into a room and I see someone, I either think to myself, you look familiar, and then I'm racking my brain. Did we meet in a business setting? Did we meet?
Or even we think it in our heads.
That's it. But it doesn't. It doesn't blurt out. Or wow, you look like Jimmy Kimmel. Wow. Huh.
Sure.
Did you get that a lot?
Yeah.
No, I don't even say that.
No.
Ever.
Never. No comments on attire. And the only time I'd say I've commented on somebody wearing something is when we've had to go in and get content, and I'm like, your shirt's very dirty. You need
not
to
that is so not what anybody wants to hear.
Your
That
shirt-
doesn't even equate to wow,
Your
you're
shirt's
hot.
very dirty. You need to change your shirt. Like I don't even know. That's so insane. And I think so. I brought up something in my CEO group that I thought was interesting, that the men were very unaware of, and they were like very appreciative that I brought it up. And it was like my first meeting that I was in this new group. And I'm always like self-conscious sometimes because I'm typically younger by like a significant amount. So then you're just worried if they're going to take you seriously. And they always do, but it's just your own imposter syndrome. And so I remember sitting in this meeting and we were I don't even remember how it came up, but I just started telling them how subcontractors or people can like, I don't want to use the word bully because it's just overused, but in a sense, yes, like they can bully you a certain way. Yeah. And like you can be made to feel very uncomfortable by a client. And I told a story that when I was in the same job that I was in the job before, is that I just had a lot of interactions with men because I was working in construction and I had to go out to trades, and I had this situation happen that a client sent me an email and asked me out to dinner, right? And on work time, like literally I was sitting at my desk and I received this email about, I'd like to take you out to dinner sometime. And it was one of my biggest clients. So then you're like, now what do I do?
Right.
Because you can't, again, it was so many years ago, but it's like you can't piss them off.
No.
Because then then it's like you hit their ego or their pride, you lose your biggest client. Right. You can't go if you're genuinely not interested in going, right, because that's completely not honoring yourself.
No.
You can't, like, I remember responding in a way that it's just, there's no coming back from that. Once that happens, it's so hard to come back from that interaction. And like, I don't think that men realize how many times throughout the day when women are working, when we're existing, when we're living, that we're checking for our safety. Mm-hmm. I don't think men realize that. So when I receive an email like that, you now just became an unsafe person.
Right.
Now I see that you're looking at me
differently
and different than just a regular person. I know now that every single time I walk into your office, you are checking me out. I know every single time you are like having an interaction with me, it is playing in your brain whether or not I'm hitting on you or I'm flirting on you. Mm-hmm. I hate that is a thing. Because now you are an unsafe person, or I now have to walk on eggshells, or I have to navigate. I can't just be myself. I have to like read an email and then go, can someone else read this? Does it seem like flirting? Like,
am I reading into it? Am I overreacting?
Yes.
Is the tone there?
Does it seem like I'm talking to someone who just tried to ask me out to dinner and I said no to?
Right. And was this a working dinner? Because I think if it was a working dinner, it would be like, well, we need to catch up on these contracts or such and such. I hate to say it, but the only time I have is at like 5:00.
Yeah. Maybe it's an entitlement to our time.
I think so.
A little bit.
Absolutely.
Like an entitlement to, because I was just thinking with lunches, like, hey, let's go out for breakfast. Let's go out for coffee. Let's go out for whatever. And it's just like, no.
Yeah, you have to
like
work
if it's
hard
a
to
business
earn my
thing.
time.
But yeah, but like if it's like you're saying, like if it's a business meeting or a business transaction, sure.
Right.
But I'm not there just to like sit with you across the table so you can sit at a table with a pretty woman and you can make yourself feel better. Like that's not my job, especially during business hours. So I don't know if you can, I just kind of went off on a big tangent there, but I don't know if anything like that, I imagine things like that you've experienced.
When I worked at Camp Hill, I mean, the way the building is set up, administration's sort of in the middle of the building, the police department is to the right. Mm-hmm. So I could walk out of the main office and the police department would be right on the left-hand side. And there were times where I was in the parking lot and a car would position itself where I had to either walk in front of the car or I had to stop and wait for them to move. And the best part about that was that the police could see it because the building was cameraed.
Sure.
But there were several times where I felt incredibly vulnerable. Again, I'm wearing a business suit. Mm-hmm. I'm probably coming from a meeting. I'm coming from looking at a project. I'm coming from the park or public works. And when you don't feel safe, everything changes.
Yeah.
Because your perspective on everything constantly moves to being safe. Mm-hmm. I didn't like to be in the building by myself.
Yep.
Unless it was locked, because then I knew only certain people had keys. But I don't know that men ever have that feeling
Yeah.
or can truly understand that unless they've experienced it.
I would agree.
And I think there are women who are every bit as aggressive with people that they find attractive. I think
Sure.
it happens. I
Oh,
think
it totally
there are
happens with men.
CEOs and vice presidents and male clerks who get hit on all the time, probably by somebody who's trying to get up in the company,
Yeah.
a promotion of some sort.
Or it's just I mean, like you hear all the time about, regardless of the intent, right? Like you always hear about the assistant that is now married to
Right.
the CEO, or like they left their wife or whatever. So it really is like any rank and any role. But what I was thinking when you were talking though was, I was like thinking about the word allies, because like there's been certain times when I've been in a work environment and I've told somebody else that something was going on, and then now they have the choice of whether or not they're going to side with what's right, or they're going to be scared to take down the bigger person. So I've had that circumstance a couple times. Like my first job right out of school was working at a small restoration company. It was a family-owned company, and I'm a non-family member. Blood is always going to be thicker than water, even if there is literal evil happening at the company. And there were so many things happening to me literally behind closed doors by the son of the company. What are you going to do? I was 19 years old.
You're
18,
doomed.
I think, when I started.
You had no hope.
But you don't know any better.
And
You're being groomed. You know what I mean?
And the sad part is you were 19. And I mean, it happens to women who are 40 as well.
Sure,
But-
all ages.
But a woman who is 40 would handle that situation differently based on her experiences previously.
Of course.
You were
Baby.
fresh off the boat.
Baby. When you don't, and I remember, again, you kind of feel trapped in the sense that you don't know, do I lose my job? Do I bring this up? Do I lose my job?
Right.
Because it's a son.
Right.
It's the son.
And what's he going to do?
Well, and what are you going to do? Bring it to his dad?
Or his mom?
Do you think his dad doesn't know he's a fucking asshole? I mean, like...
No, he does know. That's why he's working there. And
he
he's
can't
working
get a job anywhere else.
Yes!
True, fair point.
Exactly.
So the dad knows he's an asshole, but
Right. But he's not going to side against his son in a corporate setting.
Correct. And I just remember...
Ever.
Yeah, I just remember wondering to myself, like, what am I going to do?
What did you do?
Well, let's just say for this podcast, we won't get too deep into it, but for lack of a better term, the man groomed me. He was older. He was 35 years old. I was 19, and he groomed me big time to get into a very inappropriate situation with him.
Okay.
And it was my first experience in a working environment with a narcissist. That I didn't know what that word meant yet. I didn't know who that was yet. I was not that aware yet. I hadn't started therapy yet. So I hadn't realized, like, there would be circumstances with him. I had two phones. I had a work phone from them, and I had my personal phone. And you would think that he would call me on my work phone. He would not. He would call me on my personal phone. And nothing would ever happen when anybody else was in the office.
Of course.
And he would have to walk past my desk, and I was right out in the middle of everything. And then, those are your glasses?
Yeah.
And then, for when I would leave the office, it'd be like the second I'd walk out, he'd be calling me and, why are you wearing that today? What do you do? Like, it was so secretive. No one knew, other than me and other than him. And I'm like, what do I do? And it was this really sick. One day I was the best thing on earth. The next day I was, why are you wearing that? What are you doing? You're the worst person ever. Like, it was that cycle that I'm 19, right?
You have no
I'm living in
world
Pennsylvania.
you have
I'm
no world
completely away
experience.
from my family. I have no experience. And I'm in this. And so what happened was, I think I worked at that place for about a year and however many months. And I remember, and this is very interesting, this is like really where my whole faith and testimony and everything comes into play, is I remember being so mentally broken down by this individual because I was like, I can't get out of this place. Like the personality that I have now did not exist. Like I was so broken down. Like I didn't look like me. I didn't look. And I remember horrible. And I remember walking into his office and he was about to rip into me like for the last time. I think he closed the door and everything. And it was like one of those, yeah. And I remember just having this confidence because the night before it had to do, I was like, God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if this whole thing is something you're seeing, but I was like, I can't get out of this. And if you can help me get out of this, you and I will figure this out. And I remember saying that like I was yesterday. And then I woke up the next morning with like all this confidence. And I walked into his office and he like sat me down and closed the door and did the usual thing. And I just looked at him and I said, fuck you. I said, fuck you. I said, I'm done with this fucking place. I said, fuck you. I just quit right on the spot. I said, fuck you. I'm done. I grabbed all my shit out of my car. I had all these bins, all these baskets, whatever. I just threw them. He's like, where are you going? I said, fuck you. I just literally kept saying.
You just couldn't say anything else other than.
I had
such a great phrase, though. Fuck you.
Fuck you. I had nothing else to say.
Kind of sums it all up, though, doesn't it?
And I just remember, and I just drove away. And his dad never called me.
That tells you he knew exactly.
His dad
you
never
the first
called
one
me.
that had to leave like this.
Nobody ever knew that I quit the way that so God knows what the narrative was.
Oh my God, it was probably you were some weirdo.
Correct.
Came on to him.
Correct.
He had to show you the door.
I was a toxic employee. It can all be true. Like Miley Cyrus is all of it. Sure. Everything's true. All the rumors are true. It could be whatever narrative you want to say. But I just think that's a very real story for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
In their first role, even in college, a professor. And then you're groomed, in a sense. Not everyone has the personality that you and I have.
They're groomed to accept it.
Correct.
And you believe that that's the way it is, and that's how everybody treats you. And
correct.
Why wouldn't you? And I have always... It's so difficult because I've always worked very well with men in the sense that I think my personality is a little more like that in business. I don't have time for
assertive,
chitty chat. You know, we're not.
You're probably a high D on a disc, if I could guess.
If we're here on a lot of, if we're here on business, then let's get to it.
Yeah.
I don't. Other
Don't
stuff,
do the hey.
other stuff we can do that later.
Don't care. Yeah.
If we see each other socially, then we'll catch up then. And I think that works well when you're in business and you're trying to get things done. But like you said, not everybody's like that. And I think that when you're not, you open yourself up to being taken advantage of emotionally, sometimes physically, unfortunately.
Many times physically, yeah. Spiritually, just mentally.
Yes. And I think the mental breakdown, once they've done that, they've got you.
Correct.
Because
which is where I was.
If you don't have enough fortitude to take a step back or take a step forward and get out, imagine how many stay and are stuck.
It's a lot. I don't think it's by random that those like one or two posts that I've posted on LinkedIn about like toxic work environments and like people being scared to leave have gone insanely viral.
Oh, absolutely.
Like compared to any other posts. I've got lots of followers and my posts do well, but those posts specifically, insanely viral.
Well, because I think it resonates with so many people.
Which is so horrible.
And it's so funny because for all that I've experienced in the past.
Randy, don't do it.
Like in my job now, I am traveling a lot. I am at trade shows, conferences. I can truthfully say I have not experienced that. Now, could it be my age? I'm significantly older than I was.
Sure, yeah.
So,
maybe, but...
Or is it just the attitude and how I carry myself now is the difference?
I think... Let's talk about that. Because I think that is true. I think that there was a time in business that because I had been groomed, I didn't know that you could say no.
No.
or that you could say, we're not doing that. Or you could just literally not answer at all.
Right.
Right? Like, I think there was an element to being, and which is funny because I know I didn't learn that. I don't believe I learned that from my parents, because my parents were very like, you're going to question authority and you're going to, and yeah, good job. So I don't think it was from them. I really think it was from my career. But I would even say at my age, it's gotten significantly better. But you have to think that the outside has not changed. Do you know what I mean? There's no way the outside's changed. We've changed. So I think I know now that I can pick up when someone's like flirting with me or hitting, and I'm like, I'm not going down that fruit.
Yeah.
I got the band t-shirt. I'm good. Like,
See, wait till you get to be my age, because then you can say, I'm old enough to be your mother. How about we not do that?
How about we not do that?
How about
Let's just not.
I've done that. Walking in when I have to show my ID somewhere. I'm like, I'm old enough to be your mother. No, you're not. Then they see it. They're like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Like, you don't look it. You know, you get...
Sure.
But I think with age comes, I don't want to say necessarily wisdom, but that's part of it. But I think you just develop a different attitude.
Yeah.
So comfortable in who you are, which I think you are now. But I think there are a lot of women that aren't.
Well, I think they very much so, and women just included. Like, I think you very much so want to be accepted. You want to be loved. You want to be appreciated. You have all of these. This is what I'll say. If you are a female that wants to go very far in your career and you want to be very successful and like mentally sound, you need to heal from anything that may be holding on to you. Like, correct, whether it's childhood stuff or things with parents or friends or boyfriends or whatever. Like, because if not, and we kind of talked about this on my dad's podcast, that like other dynamics and other areas of your life will shine through into your working relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
So like if you have this father wound, right? Or you have a boyfriend wound or a brother wound or whatever it may be, that is going to show through in your work.
Absolutely. It's very difficult to compartmentalize who you are in all of the jobs that you have. And jobs meaning mother, sister,
wife,
daughter, wife, employee, CEO. Everything that happens in your life affects all of those roles.
Yep. And if you don't think so, you're crazy.
Oh, it absolutely
You're crazy.
does.
And there's a lot of people walking around being like, I can compartmentalize and I could. Sure. Yeah. Great.
No. No.
Good luck.
I yelled at the poor woman at Sam's Club on Friday, and I was in a bad mood after that for like 2 hours. And anything I did for those 2 hours, that was rattling around in my brain. That was such an insignificant thing in my life, even in that day, even in that hour. But wow, it affected everything after that. And that's just on a small scale. That's not even something that really matters. Yeah, that's so unimportant.
You yelled at
especially
someone
since I won. But you know,
whatever.
Especially since I was right.
It's true. Like, and I think I just hope for the world and for businesses that there's just more and more people. And I'm seeing this through my CEO groups, and that's specifically males. Cause like I told them some of these stories and we talked about some things and how people can be like bullied by clients, or like your women like might have had passes done at them and they don't bring it up because they're just used to it. And they're like, what? They were like, I was literally pulling a whole curtain back that I didn't think was a curtain. Like I thought it was a screen. I don't know what I thought it was, but I was like, there's no way that people don't know about this. And I don't know. I hope that there will be more, we'll hear more about that there are protectors, and whether it's women or men that are just in businesses that, I don't know, they're able to see these things and they're aware and they can pick up on them, and then people can feel comfortable healing. I just hope that people can feel comfortable healing at work environments too, that they'll like heal their hearts in some ways from things that have happened before and feeling safe. And yeah, I don't know. So.
I think people can. I think we're seeing more of that now. The push for mental health. It's being talked about a lot more. It's being acknowledged. I mean, even 5 years ago, it wasn't even a topic. And I think had COVID not hit the way it did, and by that I mean people's reaction to it. And then everybody was separated and you were home and you weren't used to working from home, but now you were forced to do things. And I think everybody took a step back and said, I don't necessarily like the way it was before.
Or I don't like the way I feel when I go to the office.
Right. And I'm not sure why. And maybe you never really analyzed it or thought about it.
Because you didn't have any time
Or
away.
you thought you couldn't. Right?
Yeah, like the Sunday scaries, like that whole term,
that's
like
awful.
shouldn't really be a thing. I mean, it shouldn't. Like, of course, you're not going to love your job every single day. You're going to love everything, but like, you shouldn't be dreading going to work. And I totally agree with you. And that's why, like, in the recruiting land, I'm always like, Christmas time, holidays, major gaps that people are off work are great times to try to grab them right when they get back to take them to new jobs, because they have just had a great break in time. That they were at home. We could assume they have a happy home life. Maybe they don't. But they're off work.
Sure.
You have time to think and reflect on how much you hate the place.
That's true. I never thought about that.
I loved recruiting.
Never thought about
on
that.
periods of time like that. So people were like, we got to be off on Christmas. We got to be... Sure. I believe that you should be off on Christmas. But when my job was strictly recruiting, the day right after New Year's Day, I was like, call. These people are dreading going back to work. Oh, you're really bummed that you have to go back and you have to, and
let's help you with that.
So let's talk about, we went a little, not negative, because it's reality.
Sure.
But like, would you say there's any perks to being a female in a male-dominated industry?
Yes.
Okay.
Men think very linearly. Okay? Not a criticism at all.
Waffles.
It's this.
Waffles and spaghetti. Have you ever heard that?
Yes. It's this, right? Blinders. Because they are uber focused on the end result.
Sure.
Okay? So they think, I'm here, I need to be there, and here it is. Here's the path. Women look much broader. A to Z. We're constantly scanning. I think we have the ability
to think about multiple things at the same time.
And I think we get to be more creative.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that men get to be creative. I think sometimes they feel kind of, no, you can't be creative. You have to be in charge. And I think sometimes people don't see men as having the capability of doing both.
Yeah.
So they get kind of pigeonholed into that. So I think being a woman in it sometimes is very, because when you can walk in and they're doubting you. Women can be doubting you, right? You can sit at a table, they walk in, they're like, who's this princess?
Yeah.
Who invited the queen?
Who's the next alpha person?
Yeah.
That's
Here we
like,
go.
let's have an alpha fight. Yeah.
And then you sit down and you start talking and you've got ideas, you've got examples, you've got realistic opportunities and things that can be done. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh,
yeah,
okay. You get a chance to prove yourself. Not that we should have to. Sometimes I like being able to do just that.
Yeah.
When there's an assumption made and you get to disprove it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like other, I don't want to say that I think there's an appreciation. I'm thinking about some of my clients specifically. I think they have an appreciation that I am a female, in the sense that like there's one client, well, no, there's a couple that I'm thinking about, that like there's a sense of that there's more like natural empathy there that they appreciate.
A little nurturing.
Yeah, like a little bit like that we're, I think, naturally safer to be emotional with.
Oh, definitely.
Which I think is good. And not like I'm expecting someone to call me like crying, but like I think there's just, I know that I have very good relationships with many of my clients, and they can ask me things that are very emotional that even still have to do with business, right? Like they know that there's going to be an empathy for, Kristen, I got to fire this guy tomorrow. And I'm their marketing person, right? I'm doing all of their creative work, but like they know that I'm a CEO and they respect, what I have to say, but they'll call and say something like, I got to fire this person tomorrow. And I'm just like, okay. I said, do you need marketing messaging? Do you need help? And like, I'm like hearing that, I'm like, he literally just wants to talk about, he just wants to talk about the fact that he's got to fire someone tomorrow. And like a CEO truly understands another CEO's life. Like, and I've learned that through my CEO groups that like, you could be C-suite, you could be a high level manager, but it's different when you're the owner. And so him and I kind of were talking about all that. And I'm like, well, what are you worried about? Like, what are you upset? It kind of clicked for me that I was like, okay, he really wants my like
he wants
help
to
here. And I appreciate that. I appreciate being able to meet them because I think I'm very split too, in the sense that I'm like very logical, but I'm also like highly emotional as well. And so I think when they feel like I am a resource to them, both for the logical, but then they can come and be like, I don't know what to do here. This is really can I just pick your this is challenging.
Yep. Can I just talk through this?
Because I don't know that, and I don't think men don't have the capabilities to do that. They do, but it's just not as welcomed or as obvious or, whatever.
Well, and I think there was a stigma with it, right?
Sure.
Like men were supposed to be a certain way, and I think a lot of this is generational. And I think that gets thrown around a lot, but it's true. It was different in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like it's been different. We're shaping this decade differently than it'll be in the 2030s.
Yep.
So with that is the evolution of how men are able to react and act, and I think they enjoy having some of that and enjoy being able to say to you, do you have a minute, because I've got this situation and I'm not quite sure how to handle it.
Yeah.
Whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's hiring or firing, which to me is a personal thing, because you're looking out for the person that you're firing. I mean, unless, 9 times out of 10, it's a business decision, but there is empathy associated with it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of my own career with all of this. I hope that, and if anybody's listening to this and they're like in an unhealthy work environment, or like and that's not where it was really our direction with this, but we kind of touched on it. Like if you are a male or a female, I don't think it really matters, but since we're both women, we only know the female narrative. Sure. Like if you're working at a place that you're scared, like you're saying, or you're dealing with something that I was sharing or whatever, just know that like you can get out, and there are people out there that make sure that there are not environments or situations like that happening at their company. Absolutely. Like there are businesses out there that are specifically looking for that. I mean, I even had a boss. It wasn't my next job. It was the job right after. But I don't even know how we got into it in my interview, but I like told him kind of how some of that happened. And I probably asked like, why aren't you there anymore? And I'm like, well, I'm going to be honest.
Right. I mean, here it is.
Do you want me to be honest? And I remember in the interview with him, his name was Greg, love him. I was this very wounded female, and I see that in a lot of women, that like when they're very, very wounded by men, they have this like anger and this hatred towards them, and this like women need to take over the world. When like we all saw the Barbie movie, okay? Still not good, right? Like we need each other's dynamic. There's importance in men and women, but it's like it's off balance, and we just have to keep trying to work for this balance. But I remember like talking with him, and I was like, all right, I'll tell you. And I told him, and he was like, that will never happen here. He goes, I want you to know that will never happen here. And he changed my entire perspective of men, because it did happen there. It did happen at my next job, and he fired the guy. The guy was in like the $1 Million Club, and he was like one of the top high rollers. He was there was another woman that had been working with him for a long time, and she'd been there probably about your age, I would say. She was in my group, and I was the new kid that like came to be a part of their group. I don't know. I might have been playing it as a mole. Honestly, to this day, I think part of me, like they put me in there to be like, maybe I don't know.
He knew you'd be honest about it.
He knew that I'd be honest about it, probably because of my interview.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
So I remember like trying to, again, hide it for a little while, because again, it's behind closed doors. People don't see things like this happening. And someone told him that this was happening, and he got rid of the guy. And he sent me and the other lady home for safety, just in case there was any like repercussions. And so I just remember in me, though, how much that changed my perspective of men in the workplace. And I just hope that if there's any men listening to this, that they have that power. Like that male-female dynamic is so important. And like the women in your office are, no matter their age, they're still little girls inside of them that have been hurt by females and males. They have been hurt by their fathers. They've been hurt by their brothers. They've been hurt by their husbands, by their kid. Like you have such a power and an opportunity to just change that woman's perspective of men and like take advantage of that. And women too.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, through your story, I wonder how much you changed his perspective.
Which one?
Greg. I'm wondering how much you had an influence on how he handled that situation. Probably quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because from hearing it, I mean, if you're talking to CEOs now who are still unaware that these things go on, because for the most part, people aren't going to announce it. People are going to be quiet about it.
Or they think they have to still, and yeah.
Right, and there's 100 reasons why people keep their jobs, right? The mortgage, kids, college, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So people may just be like, oh, you know what, I'll put up with it because I know
I only have 5 years left.
Right, and I can
or it's
handle it.
not that bad.
Right, I can handle it. So I think when you have the ability to change their understanding of it and their perspective, because until you walk in the shoes, you don't know. You really don't.
Yeah.
And I think you probably did a great service to him.
As a leader, too. Yeah. Because he did. He really stepped up for us. And then I remember I was crying when he left because it was a huge corporate company and they took him and moved him to New England.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, you took my fearless leader. Do you know what I mean? Like you build this bond with them that you're like, because there's such an element when I think especially, and this is why I'm so clearly from like, I have so many stories to tell, but like this is why I am so personally passionate about toxic work environments is because the things that I've lived and I've experienced. And I'm like, there's such easy fixes. Like there's just a couple things you have to change and it can become so healthy. And so I just, you build this bond with that person and they change your entire career. Because I always say, and I tell the girls this, I write this on LinkedIn all the time, if I still had the perspective that I did of men when I was there, I would not be doing what I'm doing now.
Oh,
I wouldn't have gotten here. Because I would have been filtering everything that I was seeing or hearing or the feedback of, I don't like this website. Oh, it's because I'm a girl. Like, I just would have, it's not because you're a girl, it's because the website sucks. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but that's how you hear it. When when you're filtering the world through this, like, men hurt lens.
Well, and it's jaded. It's a jaded lens.
So jaded.
And
so jaded.
And that affects it again. That affects everything. Because if you're told your whole life that this is purple, then everything you see that color is purple.
Yep. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I like being a female in business, though.
I do too.
It's cool. It's very badass.
Excuse me.
It's very cool. Yeah. I think the women are funny too. Marissa's coming on next week. No. Yes, Thursday this week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But we've talked about before how she loves to talk about like the pretty privilege thing that exists, right? Like, and
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think just women are tough on women too.
Yes. And I think I am probably a little more guilty of it. I have very little tolerance for a female who will not
do what you probably had to do.
And who will not be herself. Don't dumb yourself down in a meeting.
Cower.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Be who you are. Tell me if you don't know the answer. If you do know the answer, then let it out. Let it shut. Like, don't think that you have to be somebody else. And I have very little tolerance for that, which I'm sure comes across as having no empathy.
That's because that you say that. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I don't have time for you in your role as your position as you. You don't have time for this. You need to be better.
And you can be better.
Absolutely.
That is interesting that we have to check ourselves too. I think when you've had like a hard road, that when someone has like a perceived easier road or whatever, you're like, you didn't have to do half the shit that I had to do to get here. Right. There is a little bit of a chip on your shoulder that you hold for that. Sure. So that is interesting that we have to check ourselves.
It's the Aaron Rodgers thing. You didn't pick me until I'm 15, so I'm going to show all of you. Yeah. He's still got the chip on his shoulder, and he's MVP, Super Bowl winner. You harbor those things, and maybe that's what drives people.
Sure.
For him, I'm certainly think it does. But yeah, I mean, if you had to check yourself, and you get gun shy.
If you were talking to the younger you that was just starting working out in your career, what is advice that you would give her now?
Well, there's probably a couple of things, but
Give them all of them.
I think the biggest one is don't be offended by the criticism you get. Hear the criticism for what it is, like you said. It's not you, Kristen, you're not bad. Your website's bad.
Yeah.
Like there is a true difference. And I think when you can process and take criticism, constructive or otherwise, because not all the time is it constructive. It's just somebody being a dick.
Yeah. Be careful of who you're getting criticism from, too, I think is important, right?
If you wouldn't ask them for advice, don't take what they say to heart.
Well,
Understand where you...
Well, I think intuition is a huge thing, too.
Yes.
And I think that's intuition is very powerful in work. Like, when someone is not the vibe, right? You know when someone is not it, they don't like you. Like, that is something God-given in us that, you feel a...
You know it.
Energy. Like, we just our beings are just centered around that.
Yes.
So it's like, that's where I am. Like, it might not even be, if my energy doesn't like you, like, I'm not listening to a damn thing that you say. Like, thanks, appreciate it.
Yep.
But yeah, all right. So
because I always
feedback. I think that's great because I think a lot of people internalize it and they hear I am bad versus the website's bad,
and they fail to see then the good, right? So the second that something negative is said, then you shut out all of the good that was previously said or will be said because now you're harping on the negative.
Sure.
Take the criticism, process it, and let it go. Leave it behind. I would also say take advantage. I don't think I took advantage of some of the opportunities I had when I was younger, probably because I was afraid to succeed. I don't think I was afraid to fail. I think I was afraid that, wow, what would happen if I was really good at this?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of women suffer from that because they don't dream big enough. Not you, clearly.
No, well, it's funny you say this because I was in my CEO group. It wasn't this month because I just had it last week. It was the month before. And I was like, I'm so scared to take this next step. And they're like, well, you're not going to fail. Like, you're not. I was like, no, I'm not. I know
It's
I'm
succeeding.
I said, I know I'm not going to fail.
Right.
It's the fact that I know I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to do it well. And then I'm going to become this big thing that I've always dreamed of being. But what comes with that?
Right.
What comes with being great? What comes with having hundreds of thousands of followers, if not millions of followers? What comes with that many employees? And that's what I'm scared of.
Sure, that's the daunting part.
Yeah, I'm not scared of. I'm not going to fail.
It's the fear of succeeding.
That's why I was like, yes,
Yep.
That you're going to shine in other people's eyeballs. And they're not going to like it.
And you do have to accept that because with success and failure, there are the tangents that come off of that. You'll lose friends because people won't be able to accept that you have now become
cool
and far more successful. And, well, Kristen was here, but now she's here and,
Yeah, now it's threatening.
Right.
Yeah.
It changes the dynamic, not because of you, but because of the other person's perception.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot that, I think I would have probably taken advantage of more that I didn't.
Love. So good.
So.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome. Thanks
is
for
so
having
good.
me.
If anybody has connected with you today or wants to get in touch with you, how would you recommend that they do that? I would not say your contact information on the podcast per se, but maybe some people say LinkedIn.
Yep, I am on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So you can definitely connect with me there.
Okay, perfect. If they want to get in contact with you and
Absolutely.
chat with you more, or people can reach out to us directly if they connected with Anne's story. But anything else that you want to leave the people with that we missed?
I just think we all have the ability to be everything we want to be. And when we find whatever motivates us to do that, that's when we'll be the happiest.
And there's that thing. There's something on your heart that you want to do. It's there for a reason. You cannot fail. When you go after that thing, you cannot fail.
Because when it speaks to you, in whatever way, shape, or form, you'll know it.
Love.
And just do it.
Run at it 1,000 miles an hour. Don't look. Strong.
No.
Yep.
Be linear.
Love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. And check out next episodes next week.